most of Christianity, never mind the world in general, has a problem with Matthew 5:17-20. And Professor Solberg is no exception. I believe he very gently tries to offer a way out for those who are afraid of the Torah or for those who just hate it. He may come across as a very approachable chap, but it must be said that his teaching is dangerous. And Solberg himself hints at which path he is taking you down. See if you can pick it up here.
This channel is all about understanding and addressing the false teachings of Torahism, which is the broad theological movement that teaches Christians are required to keep Torah. You may know it as Torah-observant Christianity or Hebrew roots or something like that. Addressing the false teachings of Torahism, which is the broad theological movement, theological movement.
Oh, wow. He certainly turns things upside down.
Well, yes, come on now. Yahushua says, "Enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is broad and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. Strive to enter through the narrow door. For many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able." I mean, it is fairly obvious which is the broad way when it comes to the Torah. Is it those keeping it or those not keeping it?
Those not keeping it.
Yes, and we'll tie that in just now to Matthew 5:17-20. So Solberg tries to put Torah keepers who follow Yahushua under the broad way, leading to destruction. This is heresy.
Right, shall we dig in to the core of his teaching on Matthew 5:18?
So today, we're just going to camp out on one verse, verse 18. This is where Jesus says, "For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished." So if there's one verse on which all of Torah-observant Christianity hangs its hat, this is it. They interpret this verse to mean that nothing will change in the law of Moses until heaven and earth pass away. And from this interpretation, an entire theology has been developed that teaches that the law of Moses is still in effect on Christians today. For example, even though this passage says nothing about the Sabbath, David Wilbur used it as the crux of his argument when he and I debated whether Christians are required to keep Sabbath.
Well, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Can Solberg be this stupid? Solberg is suggesting that it is questionable as to whether the Sabbath is part of the written law. Let's give the professor a little education on the scriptures. Britannica Encyclopedia. For kids states, the Torah begins with the story of the creation of the world. It goes on to explain and interpret the laws of God, including the 10 commandments.
If you haven't memorized the 10 commandments by heart, here's the way I'll show it to you with your hands. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You hold up 4 fingers and pretend you are sleeping.
Jesus is teaching that there won't be even the slightest change in the law of Moses until some condition is met.
So, after making out the Sabbath is a doubtful inclusion in Matthew 5:17-20, Solberg then contradicts himself by making the firm assertion that this is indeed the Mosaic law being spoken of.
So, Solberg is not stupid, but rather tries to create doubt around the Sabbath when there is none.
Exactly. He simply does this since he bows to Rome's Sunday Sabbath invention.
Either until heaven and earth pass away, or until all is accomplished, or both, depending on how you want to interpret these two clauses.
Once again, Solberg is acting stupid. There is no word or the sentence here. So obviously it is both.
We can all agree that heaven and earth have not passed away.
Finally, a revelation of truth. But now Solberg tries to contradict Yahushua when he says he has not come to change anything in the Torah.
Things much bigger than an iota or a dot have already passed from the law.
Solberg offers some examples. I'm going to deal with this one first. The Apostle Kepha warned about people who twist Paul's letters. This results in Torahless, wicked thinking. There are some things in Paul's letters that are hard to understand, which the ignorant and unstable twist or pervert to their own destruction, as they do the other scriptures. By the way, Solberg also did a video on this verse to try and explain it away. You can see why. He does the very same thing. He obviously does not want you to be warned about his Torahless interpretations. Remember, he is taking you down the broad, easy way to destruction, and the warning from Kifa is, you therefore, beloved, knowing this beforehand, take care that you are not carried away with the Arab Torahless people and lose your own stability.
The Torah says that every male child must be circumcised on the 8th day after they're born. But the New Testament teaches that in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything, but only faith working through love. That's a change.
Is Solberg suggesting that Yahushua has indeed abolished the Torah command of circumcision? Then Yahushua is a liar. No, it is Solberg that is lying. Apostle Shaul is saying that the command to circumcise the flesh of the foreskin counts for nothing if the heart has not been circumcised. Remember, the command is supposed to be carried out on a male 8 days old. What does a baby know spiritually? But for those circumcised later, it must be connected to wanting to obey Yahuwah. It is a sign of a covenant with Yahuwah for goodness sake. There is no change in the Torah here. This is not a new teaching. It points to the first commandment, love Yahuwah with all your heart and keep his commands. Keep the commands of Yahuwah and his statutes, which I'm commanding you today for good for you. And you have circumcised the foreskin of your heart, and you do not harden your neck anymore. For he, your Elohim, Yahuwah, does not accept by appearances, nor takes a bribe. One may appear circumcised in the flesh, but Yahuwah says he does not go by external appearances, since one must also be circumcised in the heart. Therefore, circumcision of the flesh counts for nothing if the heart has not been circumcised, for then you will not love and obey Yahuwah's Torah.
You will be stiff-necked or rebellious.
Yes, and Yahuwah in the same breath says, he does not take bribes. Shaul is saying that circumcision of the flesh counts for nothing for those who think that because they are circumcised in the flesh, it gives them license to transgress Torah. This was the attitude of the circumcision sect, for neither they themselves who are circumcised keep the law, but desire to have you circumcised, that they may splendor in your flesh. Circumcision for these wicked ones has proverbially become a bribe to Yahuwah, which he of course will not accept. This was the thinking that Shaul was dealing with. They had elevated circumcision above the Torah itself. It had become an idol, much like grace and faith in the cult of Christianity. You can check out our article in the description.
And that article is titled, Apostle Paul Smashes Two Idols of Christianity.
If Paul is saying circumcision is done away with, then what is he doing here in Acts 16?
He came to Derbe and then to Lystra, where a disciple named Timothy lived, whose mother was a Jewess and a believer, but whose father was a Greek. The brothers at Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him. Paul wanted to take him along on the journey, so he circumcised him because of the Jews who lived in that area, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they traveled from town to town, they delivered the decisions reached by the apostles and elders in Jerusalem for the people to obey.
Here we have Paul keeping the Torah command of circumcision itself as it relates to a Hebrew who, by the way, is half Gentile. This is right after the decision reached at the Jerusalem Council. If the Torah had been abolished at the council, then this was the perfect time for Shaul to exercise that decision. But he does the opposite because the Torah was not abolished or relaxed. The Torah requires every homeborn Hebrew believer to be circumcised. On the contrary, by circumcising Timothy, Shaul makes himself a witness to the fact that Timothy wants to keep all of Torah. For I witness again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Apostle Shaul is confirming Yahushua's words in Matthew 5:17-20. But Solberg has a problem with Torah obedience. He is looking for loopholes. Apostle Shaul is a witness to the fact that Timothy is unlike those of the circumcision sect, since he has first and foremost been circumcised of heart by Yahushua. This will enable him to not transgress Torah, which stands, in whom also you are circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, in putting off the body of the Torah transgressions of the flesh by the circumcision of the Anointed One. Remember, this was what Yahuwah wants.
But what about Gentile believers? Has the Torah changed when it comes to circumcision?
The Torah does not require a Gentile to be circumcised unless he is born in the land of Israel and wants to eat of the Passover offered at the Heikel. Now, of course, there is no lamb offering anymore as the curtain in the Heikel was torn, so no need for Gentiles to be circumcised in that context under the new covenant. Solberg is quick to offer this as an example of a change in the Torah.
God himself ripped that temple veil in two from top to bottom. That's a change.
But notice he admits Yahuwah tore it himself and not Yahushua. Yahuwah also made it impossible to offer animals when he allowed the Heikel to be destroyed as prophesied in 70 AD. So Yahushua did not change the Torah as he said. He has not abolished or relaxed any of the law, not one dot or iota. The written Torah remains as a record by which all men and women prior to the new covenant will be judged as applicable, as well as for those after the new covenant where applicable. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law, and as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. Solberg is looking for a change in the Torah itself that he can use to justify the breaking of the Sabbath, for example. Is such thinking lawful? Did Yahushua have the authority to change the Torah? No. He said no man is allowed to relax the Torah. That is the context here. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of Shamam. Yahushua includes himself in the whoever. Since he is a man who came in the flesh, he is not Yahuwah. Only Yahuwah has the authority to change the Torah when all is accomplished. If Yahushua had the authority to change the Torah, then he could have simply gotten rid of it altogether and saved himself from the pain and death on the execution stake.
So the law of Moses requires an offering for sin. The New Testament says there's no longer any offering for sin. This is a significant change.
Solberg needs to differentiate between the law of the administration of the Torah versus the Torah itself. Apostle Shaul refers to a certain law that was added and then taken away. Why then the law? It was added because of transgressions until the seed should come to those to whom it had been promised, being ordained through Malachim or messengers in the mediator's hand. What law is Paul talking about? He is saying that because of Torah transgression, mainly referring to the worship of the golden calf idol and so on, a law of priestly administration was required to be added under the Levitical priesthood as a temporary way to mediate between Elohim and men who are transgressors. So the law of administering the Torah was changed, not the Torah itself. Solberg does not rightly divide the truth. He needs to differentiate the law of the administration of the Torah from that of the Torah itself. Let's take a modern example by looking at the administration of secular law, which generally requires that the accused witnesses and jury all appear in person before a judge. However, during COVID, this law changed, allowing for proceedings to be held remotely via the web in many states. In the state of Arizona, for instance, the following law: jury trials may be held subject to judicial discretion related to health and safety. Presiding Superior Court judges can decide when jury and grand jury proceedings can be held, and technology can be used for juror selection as well as grand jury proceedings and jury trials. Note this is called an administrative order. The emphasis is on administration. Likewise, changes in the administration of the Torah do not automatically change the Torah itself. For instance, when it comes to the Sabbath, we see the Hebrews begin to keep the Torah command of the weekly Sabbath soon after coming out of slavery in Egypt, where they had not been able to keep it. This happens long before the administrative order is given for the Levitical priesthood and before any tabernacle is set up by Moses. And then, of course, we see them keeping the Sabbath after the Levitical priesthood is administered. Yahushua came to take over the administration of the Torah by way of the new covenant as prophesied. For finding fault with them, he said to them, "For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahuwah. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people." So the question becomes, which laws will Yahuwah put into our minds and hearts? The answer is simple. He writes his Torah on our hearts. and it has not changed one dot or iota, even if the administrative order of Levitical priesthood with animal offerings has fallen away.
The New Testament teaches that Jesus was our sin offering once for all, and now, quote, there is no longer any offering for sin, Hebrews 10:18.
In fact, worse punishment is promised under the new administration by our high priest Yahushua. Those who willfully continue to break Torah after Yahushua has provided us the offering for us once and for all, well, they can expect sore punishment. For if we transgress Torah willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more offering for Torah transgressions, but a certain fearful looking for judgment and fiery indignation which shall devour the adversaries. He who despised Moses' law died without kindness on the word of 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much worse punishment do you suppose will he be thought worthy of punishment? The one who has trampled the son of Elohim and who has counted the blood of the covenant with which he was purified in impure thing and has insulted the spirit of kindness. Thus Yahushua has not abolished or changed the written Torah. The written Torah still stands as judgment against the willful Torah transgressors. In fact, Yahushua says the written Torah of Yahuwah will judge the Torahless, such as Solberg, who preaches anti-Torahism. He who rejects me and does not receive my words has one who judges him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. Solberg indeed cannot receive the words of Yahushua when he says he has not come to abolish the Torah one dot or iota. We also need to understand why Yahushua tells us that the Torah cannot be changed one dot or iota as long as Shamayim and earth remain. This is because these are the 2 witnesses upon which Yahweh has set life and death, blessings and curses. Here his servant Moses swears by Shamayim and earth. I call Shamayim and earth to record today against you. I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life, so that both you and your seed may live, so that you may love Yahweh your Elohim, and that you may obey his voice, and that you may cling to him. For he is your life, and the length of your days, so that you may dwell in the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give it to them.
It's simply untenable to suggest that not an iota or a dot of the law of Moses has changed.
But notice too how Solberg adds to the words of Yahushua. He tries to make Yahushua appear as a liar. Moses is not mentioned anywhere here in Matthew 5:17-20. He said he has not come to abolish the law. This is the law of Yahuwah. The law of Moses, of course, simply means the law of Yahuwah under the administration of Moses and the Levitical priesthood. But Yahushua has taken over the administration from Moses as our high priest. It was prophesied, in fact, and he said he would fulfill that. Indeed, Yahuwah said he would restore the administration to that of the order of Melchizedek, a kingly priest similar to the days of Abraham. For he declares, you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And being perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all those who obey him. Notice obedience to Torah is still required for salvation. Yahushua even reveals all these prophecies in the scriptures to the disciples before he sends. These are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the Psalms about me. But what does Solberg go and do? He now claims that Yahushua is saying something totally different to fit in with his lies. Listen carefully.
In Luke 24, he tells them, hey, remember back at the Sermon on the Mount when I told you that I came to fulfill the law and the prophets, and that nothing would change in the law until all has been accomplished? Well, I did it. All has been fulfilled, and you were witnesses to it.
Or does Yahushua say he has accomplished or fulfilled everything here?
Nowhere.
Exactly. Solberg conveniently did not pull up the verse. The words of Yahushua are, all things must be fulfilled, mentioned by Moses, prophets, and Psalms concerning him. Now, if Yahushua has accomplished everything right there and then we already have a problem. Yahushua is indeed made to look like a liar, since he has not yet ascended to the Father as prophesied. So, what now? Does he just make himself at home on the earth, having accomplished everything? No, this is preposterous. The Greek word for must here is deon. It is the active present form and reads more like needs to be fulfilled. Many think everything was accomplished already when Yahushua said, "It is finished," but that is not true. Not all has been accomplished.
When will all be accomplished?
At the end, as Yahushua says here, and here is the proof confirmed by Paul. Then comes the end when he delivers the kingdom to Elohim, the Father, after destroying every rule and every authority and power, for he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. So this is at the end. This is when all the righteous dead are raised to life. Solberg somehow thinks he can justify not keeping the Torah command of the Sabbath on the false claim that Yahushua has accomplished everything. If that were so, then there would have been no need for another administrator of that very Torah command. Yahushua is the anointed and appointed high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Hence he calls himself the master of the Sabbath, since the Sabbath remains irrespective of a change in priestly administration. And he said to them, the Son of Man is master also of the Sabbath. And in Hebrews we read, for if Yahushua had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? There remains therefore a rest to the people of Elohim. And the word rest there is sabbatismos in Greek, which literally means Sabbath keeping. And of course, the word people means all believers, not just Jews. Solberg's false claim is further destroyed by Apostle Shaul. Shaul confirms very clearly that not all has been accomplished or fulfilled, but is to be fulfilled and is being fulfilled. He says, love works no ill to its neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. Now many will quote this verse so as to claim that the Torah has somehow been replaced by some kind of love. But we know this is not true, since the Torah is the very definition of Elohim's love. For this is the love of Elohim, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. Love is the fulfilling of the law cannot be said by Shaul if the law has already been fulfilled. We see that Elohim's love is as eternal as the Torah, and it is fulfilling. That means it is in the present continuous tense as opposed to fulfilled past tense, as Solberg claims. Shaul has proven over and over again that the law is continuing to be fulfilled in us through Yahushua. Do we then make void the law through emunah? Elohim forbid. On the contrary, we establish it. We continue in the written Torah which remains. In Yahushua HaMashiach, then I have reason to be proud of my work for Elohim. For I will not venture to speak of anything except what Mashiach has accomplished through me to bring the Gentiles to obedience by word and deed. So here, Shaul goes as far as boasting about the further accomplishing work of Yahushua being done in the Gentiles through his preaching. As we can see, not all was accomplished up to Matthew 24, as Solberg claims. This accomplishing of Yahushua is leading Gentiles to obedience in word and deed. Obedience to what? Obedience to Torah itself, since Yahushua did not come to abolish Torah, but make us establish or continue in it. This is the continuous accomplishment and fulfillment of Torah in every believer as prayed by Yahushua to the Father. I have manifested thy name unto the men which thou gavest me out of the world. Thine they were, and thou gavest them me, and they have kept thy Torah. I have given them thy Torah, and the world hath hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Purify them through thy truth. Thy Torah is truth. Which Torah is this now? Is it the one before, or after Yahushua died, or is it the same unchanged Torah? Well, it is clear that it is the same Torah being preached, as he says in the next breath. Neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word. This is the same Torah being preached by Shaul, which is what he has just been boasting about when it comes to obedience in word and deed. Hence we have Yahushua's prayer concerning the Torah purifying future believers. Then we have Apostle Shaul confirming an answer to that prayer, even as far as the Torah purifying Gentile believers as well. And in conclusion, we will end with Apostle Paul's words in Ephesians that he might purify and cleanse it, referring to the body of believers with the washing of water by the Torah.